another underwater resort, hotel, etc. that's been out there for quite a while and been talked about was Planet Ocean Underwater Hotel. And that's from Tony Webb. So I thought we would take a look at his website and basically produce another podcast here explaining what he's working on, what his focus is, and just some information about this project as well.
Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
All right, ready to dive in. Today we're going deep on this idea of Planet Ocean Underwater Hotels. They've got this website, and let me tell you, it paints a pretty interesting picture of what vacations could look like someday. So think about it this way. You're planning a trip, right? But instead of booking that beachfront resort, you're, checking into a hotel underwater.
Yeah, it's definitely a bold idea. And the guy behind it, Tony Webb, he's not exactly new to these kind of big, ambitious projects. He actually started out in space tourism before he got into this whole underwater hotel thing.
Wow, that's quite a change, isn't it? From outer space to the ocean floor.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what made him switch gears like that. Do you think maybe he sees these underwater hotels as a way for more people to experience, like a new frontier? Something that maybe even helps with conservation?
That's a good point. It could be that he just sees how urgent it is to protect our oceans. And maybe he thinks these hotels can help fund those efforts and get people more connected to marine life.
Yeah, he's definitely thinking big. Planet Ocean wants to create a network of, get this, 50 movable underwater hotels.
50. That's a lot.
50?
Yeah, 50 movable hotels. And then want to partner up with all 50 U.S. states and 50 nations around the world. It's a huge project, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. Can you imagine the logistics of all that? And think about what it'd be like to actually be inside one of these hotels. It'd be like living in a reverse aquarium almost. The fish would be looking in at us instead of the other way around.
Yeah, it'd totally change how we see the ocean, wouldn't it?
Totally.
Just to wonder how that kind of shift in perspective would affect, how we understand and connect with marine life.
And they're not just putting these hotels anywhere. They've picked spots like Key West, the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Belize, Panama, places that are already famous for their amazing marine life and all the tourism stuff.
Yeah, it seems like they're choosing locations that'll attract tourists and maybe lessen the environmental impact by working with what's already there.
Makes sense. And they're really pushing that whole conservation angle, too. Planet Ocean says these hotels will be a major way to fund efforts to regenerate coral reefs.
That's an interesting claim. It's a good idea, hotels helping with conservation, but we need to know more about how they'll do it. Like, how are they going to make sure these hotels don't actually hurt the ecosystems they're supposed to be protecting? And how will they even measure if they're making a difference to the coral reefs?
It's a tough balance, isn't it? Trying to boost tourism without hurting these delicate environments. But okay, let's say they somehow pull it off. How are they going to pay for something this massive? Building even one underwater hotel can't be cheap, let alone 50.
Right. Well, the way they're getting funding is definitely different. They have this thing called the Freelancer Buyer Program, where freelancers can actually earn a stay in one of these underwater hotels just by doing their work.
Wait, so instead of getting paid in cash, you get paid in underwater vacations. That's pretty wild. Like a barter system for the digital age. Who knew being a graphic designer could get you a front row seat to a coral reef?
Yeah, it definitely shows they're trying to appeal to a certain kind of traveler, someone who's into tech, who likes the whole freelance thing, and who wants experiences that are, out of the ordinary.
For sure. And it doesn't stop there. They've got these affiliate and sponsor programs, too, where people can win stays or even cash prizes by promoting Planet Ocean.
Yeah, almost like they're turning fundraising into a game. It'll be interesting to see if they can actually get the money they need to make this whole thing happen. But even beyond the money part, there's a bigger question. Do you think people actually want underwater hotels? Is there really demand for this?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It sounds cool, sure, but would people actually spend their money on it? Would you?
Honestly, I'm not sure. It's tempting, the idea of experiencing the ocean like that, so close. But then I also wonder about the whole ethics of it. Are we just creating another playground for rich people and hurting the environment while we're at it? These are the kinds of things we got to think about.
Absolutely. And don't forget, Planet Ocean isn't just talking about hotel stays. They're talking about underwater condos. Imagine owning a piece of the ocean floor.
Yeah, they're selling it as an investment. $5 million for 2 condos with guaranteed rental income for 5 years. That's their pitch.
$5 million. Wow. Sounds like they're going after a very specific and very wealthy crowd.
Yeah, it definitely raises some questions about the future of real estate. Are we headed towards a world where luxury living goes beyond land into the ocean? And if so, what does that mean for, who gets access and what happens to conservation? Yeah, it's definitely a concept with like way more questions than answers. But let's look at some of the good stuff Planet Ocean says on their website. They're saying these underwater hotels will bring in more tourists, help marine life, boost the economy for locals, create learning opportunities, and even lead to better sustainable living tech.
Okay, so they're painting a pretty optimistic picture. It's like they're saying underwater hotels are the solution to, like, everything. But let's break it down a bit. More tourists? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But how exactly do they see these hotels helping marine life?
Well, they're saying that by getting people closer to the underwater world, these hotels will help them appreciate and, want to protect the ocean. And the money they make could go back into conservation, research, and educational programs.
Yeah, I can see that. But then again, we've also seen how tourism can really damage fragile ecosystems if it's not done right. So it's not as simple as saying more tourists equals a healthier ocean.
Exactly. It's a complicated issue. And yeah, the potential economic benefits for local communities are important to think about.
Yeah.
We also got to consider the downsides. Like, will these hotels push out existing businesses or make these communities rely too much on one industry? These are things we need to look at carefully.
Right. It's all about finding that balance, making sure any economic growth doesn't hurt the environment or the people who live there. But let's put aside the impact stuff for a second and talk about the experience itself. What would it actually be like to stay in one of these underwater hotels? I'm picturing like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, according to Planet Ocean, guests can expect super fancy accommodations. They say you'll be 30 feet underwater with panoramic views, glass elevators, the whole 9 yards. They're really focused on making it safe and comfortable.
So it's not like you're roughing it in a submarine or something. They're going for a full-on luxury resort vibe.
Exactly. They're marketing it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance to connect with the ocean in a totally new way. Imagine waking up and seeing a coral reef right outside your window.
Okay. Yeah, I could get used to that. But let's be real, this kind of experience isn't going to be cheap. We already talked about those underwater condos costing millions. What about just staying in the hotel?
They haven't said how much that'll cost yet. But considering the whole scale of this project and how fancy they're making it sound, it's probably not going to be affordable for everyone.
Yeah, probably not your average weekend getaway. But going back to those condos for a minute, they're saying it's an investment opportunity. You buy a condo, and then you get a share of the money they make from hotel guests. Do you think that's legit, or is it just a gimmick?
It's hard to say, honestly, without more info. The real estate market is always changing, and this whole underwater property thing is brand new.
It's uncharted territory for sure, and $5 million is a lot to risk on something that might not work out.
Yeah, it's a high risk, high reward kind of thing. But let's imagine, just for fun, that underwater living actually takes off and becomes more affordable. How do you think that would change how we see the ocean?
That's a really interesting question. Would it lead to more awareness and conservation, or would it just make things worse, like more pollution and overfishing?
It's hard to predict, for sure. But I think it's safe to say that if people start living in the ocean in large numbers, the impact will be huge, both good and bad.
It's like a giant social experiment, almost. And the results could affect the whole planet. But, okay, let's not get too carried away. There's still a ton of obstacles Planet Ocean needs to overcome before any of this becomes reality.
Oh, absolutely. We talked about the money problems, the environmental concerns, the social and economic impacts. But what about the actual building of it all? Making a structure that can handle the pressure and, the corrosive stuff in the deep ocean is incredibly hard.
Yeah, that's where it gets really tricky. And this is where I think Planet Ocean needs to be more upfront. How are they going to guarantee the safety and, make sure these hotels don't fall apart? What about life support systems, waste management, emergency plans? You can't just ignore that stuff.
And they said the hotels will be movable, remember? That adds a whole other layer of engineering challenges. How are they going to move and install these massive things without messing up the environment around them?
Yeah, and how are they going to power these underwater cities? Will it be traditional energy sources, or are they looking at renewable stuff like wave or tidal power?
These are all questions they need to answer if they want people to take them seriously.
Transparency is key here. They're asking people to invest in their vision, and investors deserve to know exactly how they're going to do it.
Right, and it's not just about investors. It's about earning the public's trust and showing that they're truly committed to sustainability and responsible development.
Because at the end of the day, the ocean isn't just a playground for rich people. It's a vital ecosystem that supports all life on Earth.
Exactly. We have to treat it with care and respect.
Well said. So, we've covered the potential good stuff, the risks, the ethical issues, and how complicated it all is. It's clear that Planet Ocean's vision is both super ambitious and full of challenges. It's like we've just dipped our toes in the water here, really. What are your biggest takeaways from all this?
You know, for me, it's just how bold the whole thing is. Like, it's one thing to imagine underwater cities, but to actually try and build them, that takes guts and maybe a little bit of crazy.
Yeah, it's a real moonshot. But even if Planet Ocean never actually builds one of these hotels, just the fact they're trying makes us think about the ocean in a whole new way.
I agree. It challenges what we think is possible and makes us consider, like, how else we could be interacting with the underwater world.
It's like they've thrown down a challenge. And now we got to decide if we're going to accept it. Are we ready to live in the ocean? And if so, what kind of future do we want there?
Those are big questions, way bigger than any one company or project. They're about sustainability, about ethics, about, our responsibility for the planet.
It's not just about fancy hotels and underwater condos, is it? It's about the future of our oceans and the future of humanity.
And it's about realizing that the decisions we make now will affect generations to come.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about the vision, the good and the bad, the ethical stuff. What's the next step?
I think we need to keep talking about it. Ask the hard questions, demand transparency from companies like Planet Ocean, and really have a discussion about the future we want.
We can't just sit back and let the future happen to us. We got to be a part of shaping it.
Exactly. And that starts with learning, staying informed, and speaking up.
Well said. So, to everyone listening, if this deep dive into Planet Ocean underwater hotels got you thinking, keep digging. Explore the source material, do your own research, and form your own opinions. Because in the end, the future of the ocean is up to us.
And hey, who knows? Maybe someday you'd be sipping a drink in an underwater hotel watching sharks swim by.
That would be something else. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Planet Ocean underwater hotels. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep imagining what's possible.